today, and also your interest in this particular topic. We have some analysts and journalists here, and to talk to Brian Thompson about the questions that you're looking confused. Is everything all right?
No, yeah.
Okay, great.
He's taking a photo.
Oh, good.
Or video or something.
Great, really good.
Something's being recorded.
Oh yeah, you better believe it.
So Brian, why don't you tell us about your area of expertise and what you do for PTC?
Okay.
And that'll kind of ground us and put some framework to a Q&A.
All right. So I work on Mike Campbell's staff. I have responsibility for the product management team for our CAD products at PTC. Mm-hmm. So the team of guys that are here that sort of are answering for all of the different apps on the Creo platform. And I also have responsibility for Creo Elements Direct, the former Co-Create product as well.
Okay.
That's also run on my team. My background is mechanical engineering and computer science. And I've been with PTC coming up on 5 years. And before I was in PTC, I spent 16 years or so in industry as an engineer, as an engineering manager, as a design engineer. I used Pro Engineer for the first time in 1993 at Pitney Bowes. So I'm an engineer by background. I spent a lot more time actually making products that you can feel and touch than I have making software products. But that's who I am now.
Excellent. And in that same spirit, why don't we go around and introduce yourself and your organization, and also give some color in terms of why you chose to attend this particular session. So you must have questions about CAD. So Mark, why don't you go, please?
Okay, I'm attending this session because Jack told me to. No.
If only it was that easy all the time, right, Jack?
I did some arm twisting because I knew there was an extra chair and I wanted you to make...
No, I'm joking. Mark Halpern, I've been in the industry for about 30 years. At Gartner now. I started out in mechanics as well. I worked for ANSYS as a developer for about 5 years, and then decided I wanted to do real engineering, so I went into the defense area. Cold War ended. Was at SDRC for a little while, now part of Siemens as a field engineer, and then went to D.H. Brown Associates, and been at Gartner now for 12 years, leading up all their PLM and CAD, CAE, not enough hours in a day.
Okay.
Josh Mings, engineering background. Started in Earth Station satellites, the big satellite arrays, and got into aircraft interiors. That's been mostly my gig for the past 10 years. Started up SolidSmack.com and joined together with this fine fellow here a few years later and started EVD Media. And we cover the CAD industry and interview a lot of different people.
Excellent.
My name's Adam O'Hearn, and I work with this fellow on SolidSmack as well as EngineerVsDesigner, the podcast, and CADJunkie.com as well. And we just come to these events, find out what's going on. We're definitely interested in the CAD area. That's kind of our core area of interest, so it makes sense that we would have been assigned to this group. We didn't ask to be in this group. Once again.
Nobody wanted it, Brian.
You're the one that asked. Why did you end up in this group? Well, actually, because it's written on my page. But, you know.
I did not have an agenda.
All right.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm Jack McAvoy. I work for PTC. I manage analyst relations. I'm in the communications group, which is part of marketing. So thanks again for everybody for being here. John?
Yep, John McCrell from SimData. We are a consulting and analyst firm in the PLM arena. My interest in being here is that we're interested in all things PTC, as we are with all the rest of the vendors as well. So
Sure.
Great.
my two colleagues are sitting here.
Same story.
Big three of us.
Jim
Excellent.
Roach.
Jim Roach. Thank you. Ken?
Oh boy.
Nobody cares about
At the last company, I'm with SimData to Kenversboro. The last event we had, they started calling me CAD Boses because I've been in this industry from the beginning, and everybody wants to know when I'm going to finally retire.
And have you not had some inventions as well?
Yeah. My educational background is math and computer science, and my PhD dissertation was now called NURBS.
Oh, really?
I'm the father of NURBS.
Wow.
Went to computer vision right out of grad school into R&D in technical path. Within 7 years, I was effectively the CTO at Computer Vision, even though they didn't have that title. It was a different title. When I was asked to move into management of R&D, which I did, kicking and screaming, but then fell in love with it and worked my way up to vice president of the core R&D group, which was everything other than manufacturing, electrical, and AEC. I had all the database, the graphics, the geometry, and all the mechanical applications. Left them during a hostile prime takeover, went into consulting independently for a while, and then joined D.H. Brown Associates, where I worked with Mark.
Oh, is that right? You guys?
Oh yeah, we
Wow.
Yeah, checker
wonderful
cast.
years.
Yep. And I stayed with Mark, went on to Gartner. I stayed with Don Brown, and then there was the renaming of the firm to CPDA at one point. What, 2.5 years ago now? 3 years?
2 years ago in May.
2 years ago in May. We were acquired by SimData. Don Brown was very ill with ALS, so he had to sell off the firm or close the firm at some point. And I had known these guys for a while. John worked at Computer Vision for a while, so we knew each other from even back then. And we're very much in sync. So my whole background is CAD.
Right.
But I've designed CAD systems.
Right.
And the other little tidbit for PTC is I used to share an office with Sam Geisberg, your founder. And I'm the one who stood up for his American citizenship.
Oh my God. What a small industry. It's unbelievable, you know?
I got to meet Sam right before we launched Creo.
Wow.
That was a very interesting meeting.
So Ken, anything you heard today, or did you come with any questions regarding PTC's
I guess
strategy or
the
what
big
we're doing?
question that's been floating around in my mind, I did hear some stuff, which brings up the second topic, but talk to us a little bit about how well the strategy is going between Creo Parametric and Creo Direct. Part of the issue in my mind is because Creo Direct is being built from the ground up, from a blank piece of paper upward, it's going to take time for it to be a mature tool that users are going to really feel comfortable going to. I'm not so sure that's happened yet, because it still is fairly young. And how is that playing out in the industry? What kind of pressures is PTC under to get that moving?
Well, that's a good question. Let me modify a little bit your presumption. It is true that Creo Direct's built from the ground up, but I would say that's mostly true outside of the geometry kernel. The geometry kernel of Creo Direct is common with the geometry kernel of Creo Parametric, which is important because we don't allow changes to be made to the Creo Direct product that will not be interoperable with Creo Parametric because the geometry kernels have remained constant. But that your point about the maturity, the rate of maturity of Creo Direct is still a valid one, but that's mostly about two things. One, we didn't have any 3D solver in Creo Direct up through Creo 2.0. You heard Mike talk about the 3D solver, or if you didn't hear Mike talk about it, I talked about it today. We will have a 3D solver in Creo Direct in Creo 3. So we're overcoming that hurdle. That's a big help to get us further along the path of making all the geometry modifications in a direct modeling environment that you'd like to be able to make that you cannot make today. But more fundamentally, the issue around that geometry kernel is a big area of investment and growth for us. We've just got to make the workflow is more seamless. The workflows just look and feel and behave more like a direct modeling workflow, and that takes time. Our engineering teams are learning a lot, still learning a lot about how those workflows should work. But in terms of pressures from the marketplace, we have a lot of customers that still love the Co-Create products, the Elements Creo, now branded Creo Elements Direct.
Very good product.
And they've been happy with our 18, our 19, our 19.1 releases. They're happy with them. We're going to continue to develop those products until Creo Direct is sufficiently mature that we feel like they can move onto the platform. And we'd like it to be faster. Our customers would like it to be faster. But we're moving pretty well, and Creo 3 will be a great step in that direction, and we'll continue.
Are you seeing a pent-up demand for the duality of parametric and direct? Because my experience is a lot of people out there are really hooked on parametric. Then there are some companies who are convinced direct is the way to go, but they don't necessarily want to try to mix things. And in my mind, the technical strategy PTC has to move back and forth is an excellent strategy, probably better than I've seen from anybody. But the question is there any kind of market pull for that?
The pull comes in specific use cases. So you're right that no one knew before Creo was announced and before we started talking about it that you could truly have completely interoperable parametric and direct modeling systems where there was no loss of data fidelity whatsoever between the two systems. So I don't think there was an inherent pull for that kind of thing because folks who were completely dedicated to the parametric design methodology just weren't thinking about the types of problems that a direct modeling methodology can solve for them. But it's our job to make customers aware of the flexibility that direct modeling gives our customers. And you can hear that in some of the strategy discussions I have on Creo. You hear about things like customers making late stage design changes to their models when they've gone down a path with a parametric design intent. They thought they anticipated in the parametric design intent the types of changes that their marketing teams or other engineering departments might want to make to those models, and they haven't been able to anticipate them all. And so now they're straddled with several days worth of work to maybe rework that design intent, or a few hours worth of work to use a direct modeling workflow and still be able to make that change in a way that doesn't violate the underlying parametricity of the model. So we've educated customers about that use case. We've educated them about concept design in particular. Creo Direct is a great tool for concept design, and it's particularly powerful in its interoperability with parametric design for our current Pro Engineer customers, right? We have Pro Engineer customers going back to the 80s that have parametric models that were built 10, 15 years ago that their design intent is probably out of date. They don't really care a lot about it, but certain aspects of it they still want to retain, that they still think are important. You can make direct modeling changes to those types of models and not even worry about any design intent in the model, but still have it there if you need it. And so that's another use case that we're driving this sort of interoperability around, and customers are starting to latch onto it. In fact, primarily we market Creo Direct today as a tool for concept design because, as you noted, it's just not mature enough for a full engineering.
Yeah, well, last year I joked with your guys about you should have, the first release you should have called it Rev 2 anyway.
Mark, how you doing over there? I know you've got a question or two.
Oh yeah. Probably the most interesting CAD announcement today was the one about being able to make edits within Creo of other CAD models and then be able to basically the results will be in the native authoring CAD system. Could you, I doubt you would even want to give us all the details, but if you could outline the approach by which you're doing that. So for example, you're not converting everything into, say, a neutral format then exporting it. That would seem kind of silly, but I'm just curious as to the approach you're using. I know there was like some type of harness that was being used when you acquired computer vision, say with CAD's 5 models, that you somehow linked those to your...
That was a linkage more.
Yeah. So what's the technical approach you're generally using
So let me clarify. The multicad work that Mike talked about, it is true that in Creo 3, you'll be able to open non-native CAD data and it'll behave in a Creo environment natively. You don't see another Creo object involved. It looks like a non-native object, but it behaves like a Creo native object in the Creo environment. But
when you're saying it behaves like a Creo, but it's not really Creo geometry.
Right.
Somehow
it's
you've
third-party
created a
CAD
harness
system
that
geometry.
it's still operating with the third-party data.
But what the trick is, and Mike did mention it, it was kind of subtle, because his talk track and the video were not perfectly aligned. But the trick is, if you go to modify that native data in the Creo environment, we will tell you you're modifying native data. You need to now convert this to a Creo object. So we actually pause and say, "Are you sure you want to modify that?" And the customer gets the decision to say yes or no. If they say yes, then what we do is we create, as you mentioned, we create this link back to the original model and give you a new Creo object that's still linked back to the original CAD object. So we can and we will be able to export third-party CAD formats.
So what,
but
you
we
have
don't-
literally two models running in parallel then?
Right. In that case, you would have two models running in parallel, which, by the way, you can do today with Creo 2.0. You can have
Okay.
two models running in parallel today. The change
So
in
you
Creo
end
3,
up with a native Creo model,
Yep.
but you're also running the same changes
from the third-party model. That's
in
right.
the native model.
Yeah, we keep an eye on
Okay.
that. We keep an eye on that native model, and if anything's changed there, we pull those changes in with a technology that we patented a few years ago.
Okay,
that
and this
keeps
is,
an eye on that.
Parametrically, that would be more obvious to me than the direct modeling to be able to do something.
Yeah, I
like
mean, the
that.
direct modeling angle is more about the fact that we don't bring the third party's features into the system, but direct modeling is a great way to make changes to imported geometry, and with our technology, those changes you make are actually captured as features in the model tree, so they can establish parametric design intent on those third-party models in the Creo environment if you choose to go that route.
Wait. So
in the Creo feature.
so if you make a direct modeling change on that, you have the native CAD system. You want to make a direct modeling change. It actually copies that over to the Creo environment. You're making the changes to the Creo environment, say with direct modeling.
Yep.
Does it actually update the original
No.
model the same way?
Now, in the case where you have two models running parallel, which is the case we're talking about,
Right.
you can maintain a link between the two, and as long as no changes you make in the Creo environment violate any changes made in the native environment, we'll continue to take updates. You can continue to get updates from the third-party
certainly,
environment.
as long as there's no topology change. So
As long
this
as there's
is
no- right.
primarily parametrically driven. Then.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
It sounds like they're using the thing they did with CADs.
Yeah, that's
It's
that.
a
That's
very similar technology.
Yeah,
and-
that's what I was just thinking.
Which
as
is,
well.
you know,
Yeah.
Creo 3 eliminates that hassle of having to deal with those two models in parallel.
Okay.
But if you change it, you go back to that because
Well, I
we
must
want to make
admit,
sure.
it came across a lot cooler than that. in the
Believe me when I
presentation
tell you,
this
it's
morning.
still really cool. I mean, I think it is. Anyway, did you wanted to ask a question?
No, I was just, I didn't hear it the same way that
Okay. All right.
I heard that you can make model change in the Creo data. It doesn't impact the
That's
foreign
right.
data at all.
That's right. That's
But
correct.
you do keep that link, which is nice, because
Right.
as in the example you showed, you put a bunch of holes in the brake
Right.
rotor and
And
Yeah,
they
no,
came in.
but I thought if you're making the changes parametrically, it will update that
no,
native.
that's not what he said.
It won't.
It will or won't?
It will not.
It will not.
Once you make a change to a model you've opened natively in Creo, we stop and we say, you're making a change, that needs to become a Creo object now.
Better
then
to
we'll
talk
make-
about Creo and foreign data than talk about native
Okay,
data,
so
because
that
native's
means
two
you
different
can't
things.
say get that native model back into the original authoring system.
You will be able to do
with
that.
Changes.
You could export it. You could export it back out to the operating system, but that's the
All
only way
right.
to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So in your
okay.
view, when
I
you do that
misunderstood.
It's a lot less cool than it sounded.
Is that going to go back with parametric fidelity, or is it going to go back as a lump?
No, it goes back as geometry. It'll go back as geometry.
So it's a lump.
I'm gonna have to get rid of that tweet I sent.
I wanted to follow up on Ken's question earlier and just ask about the decision to keep Creo Direct and Creo Parametric separate synchronous technology with Siemens products is a very different kind of approach, but in the same way, it's actually almost the same. It's just you're doing them in one package versus separate packages. Can you talk at all about that decision and why you think that's the way to go?
Yeah, well, our thousands of co-create customers made it very clear to us that they love the direct modeling paradigm, and they want a standalone direct modeling application to continue to do their work. And so it was very largely customer driven. But I'll also add that I hear you. There are nice benefits to having direct modeling tools in the parametric environment.
Right.
And that's what the flexible modeling extension of Creo Parametric is intended to provide our customers. We have a suite of direct modeling tools that you can access from directly in the parametric environment through this flexible modeling extension that give the parametric modeling user the ability to edit the model in a really nice, slick, direct modeling fashion without breaking any of the underlying parametric design intent. And so we do recognize the value of having them sit in the same environment, and we've done that with the flexible modeling extension.
And I mean, just to follow up on top of that, this is one of the things that struck me this morning looking at the chart of the 10 Creo apps that are available now, and he said, quote, there are dozens more on the way. And I was just thinking, wow, I can't even keep up with the 10 that are on the screen. It's kind of intimidating at the moment. You add dozens more.
Yeah.
How am I going to know what the hell I need to buy from you in order to make this work? Isn't this a little confusing?
His comment was very apropos.
Think about it this way. The apps are intended to be purpose-built for certain types of tasks that a certain type of person might have in an organization. And depending upon the size of organization you have or the breadth of your development team, you may be the type of person that all day, every day, what you worry about is harnessing. I'm going to use harnessing. You may be someone that you worry about harnessing all day. This is what you do for Caterpillar, as an example, right? Or this is what you do for a particular automotive supplier or somebody. And why would I want to burden someone whose sole focus is harnessing with the full-blown parametric environment of Creo Parametric? Why would I want to burden them with having to learn how to access the functionality of just to do harnessing work by forcing them to go through the majesty of our full-blown highest-end CAD package? Why not give them a tailor-made application that allows them to do harnessing in a way that makes sense to them but reads the Creo data natively? That's the essence of the app strategy. That doesn't mean that when we come out with an app on harnessing that the engineer that does it all won't still have access to harnessing as an extension to Creo Parametric. Okay. They will. Great evidence of this is what we did with our simulation products. Creo Simulate is still available today as an extension to Creo Parametric for that engineer who likes to do design work, analysis work, all as part of their day-to-day workflow. But if you want to do simulation and you're a person that does simulation all day, every day, and that's all you do, you can buy Creo Simulate as a standalone application.
I guess my question is just then, doesn't that level of granularity in your product line makes a lot of sense from a functional standpoint, assuming that everyone knows all of the products that you have and knows which ones are appropriate for what jobs. But your marketing people must have a hell of a time figuring out how to pitch this, right? I mean, how do you choose what to talk about?
When I first was exposed to that thing, I grabbed one of his technical leaders in user interface to come talk at my conference because I like what they're doing. Open up your iPhone, take a look at what's there.
Very specific.
Okay, they're riding a wave that is coming. All the new generation is going to be so used to that that I think what they're doing, they've got a coup going here with the user interface in my mind, because they're really riding a much wider wave of the general population, not just technical people, for that kind of user interface. So it makes total sense to me to do the apps.
I have to agree. When I was in China, it's very clear for these big markets that are opening up, totally supports the feedback that I got in Asia.
Yeah, and there's a new thing coming. You've heard big data, Internet of Internet. There's a thing called visual decision making, which is really all user interface should be done as much as you can through pictures. And, because of that, because of the iPad.
Visual representation.
Yeah. And looking at products, we're looking at products from that standpoint now too. And I think they're partly riding that wave.
So, quick one on the,
I really do like some of the stuff you guys are doing.
on the direct modeling extension for Creo Parametric.
Yeah,
Is that an additional cost module?
it is.
So was it one of the 10?
No,
I didn't look at the slide.
those are
long
10.
enough.
Those are
Those are the 10
As
major areas.
Adam pointed out, those are the 10 standalone apps.
So this is like a
this is an
plug-in
extension
on
on
the edge.
Creo Parametric.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is not to underplay what you said. It's a
I think that's
challenge.
what's confusing me
It's
is
a
like you've got
challenge
these
to
apps and
explain
then
it
you've got
all.
these extensions and then you've got some. They all talk to each other, which is nice to know, to be comfortable knowing that whichever one I get, if it's the wrong one, I'll still be able to switch to another one. But I don't know. I'm just having trouble with this in my mind because I feel
We all-
intimidated as a
this
person who
group
might
gave them a hard
Yeah.
time when they
dive
first
into this. Yeah.
introduced it,
Yeah. I mean,
the names.
we're finding what these gentlemen are finding, and that is that customers, especially enterprise customers, they really get it. They have Creo Options Modeler is another great example. We have customers that have 10 people that all they think about is the configurability of their products, and they are the product architects for their company, and they love the concept of an app that is dedicated to what they do to help them properly configure and validate configured products that whose configurations can be managed in the PLM environment. I mean, they love that concept. So it is something we're keeping a close eye on, and it keeps me busy and it keeps our marketing teams busy. But it's so far we're finding that customers are finding the appeal.
Within
They
a
like
large
it.
corporation, you wind up with role-based configuration,
That's exactly
different
right.
sets of apps.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's
Right, so it's sort of
that's,
like
that's
an
the
Apple
intent.
App Store, and you go down there like I
Yeah.
have like 4 apps, but I know people that have pages of 100 apps.
Right.
Good for them. I don't know how many they use, and I don't know how they
Yeah.
organize them. They got them in
Screen after screen
screen
after
after
screen.
screen, and I say, okay, that's convenient.
The only problem I've ever
some people.
seen with that approach is it's the old. It's also the problem with the other companies' approach of having all these options, price list options.
I was gonna say that's
is
the
if
thing,
they
yeah.
ever change it, it's like shuffling the deck, and everybody goes insane because it becomes a nightmare trying to manage.
Yeah, pricing and
How do you
packaging.
move your current customer who has this collection to the new collection, which is totally different?
Right.
And customers go insane whenever
We're
that
like, oh,
happens.
Creo can do that. You just have to pay for this other thing.
Well, that's
Oh, yeah, I can do that too, but there's another one you have to buy for that.
Yeah.
And then, oh, what you need is this one and that one and the other.
There was a lot
Or
of
maybe you should use the
trepidation.
plugin and not the app, because if
Yeah.
you want this, then
There was a lot of trepidation when we announced Creo, and if you have a Pro Engineer seat and you have, say, the Mechanica extension of Pro Engineer seat, and you have I don't know, MDO, or you have reverse engineering extension, those extensions are all available off of Creo Parametric. You get those, that's fine. You're good to go, right? You're fully. We never take anything away. That's the idea. But if you want to extend your ecosystem of applications, and you want to have specialized apps for people that all they do is simulation, or all they do is some of the other things we've talked about, then you can buy those apps independently.
How are you differentiating the apps and extensions? It seems like a lot of damage control that is having to go on with the.
No, not at all.
Everybody understands what's going on, and this is
I
an
think
app
they
and this
finally
is
are
an
getting it
extension.
now. I mean, our customers, we've had enough customers adopt, none of whom have said, PTC didn't come through on their promise to get me everything I have on Pro Engineer today. None of them have said that because it's never happened. We've had enough customers adopt Creo Parametric, get all their extensions, get comfortable with it. To where some of them come back to us and say, okay, we'd like some Creo Options Modeler, we'd like some Creo Layout to go do conceptual engineering. They adopt first, and then they come back to us and say, we get it, we're comfortable, our users are using it, but guess what? We want to get some of the additional value out of Creo by now doing a conceptual engineering pilot with you on Creo Layout, or by now doing a variant product design pilot with you with Creo Options Modeler, or so forth. It's generally happening as a two-stage process. They get comfortable with Creo by adopting Creo Parametric, get all the extensions that they've had and known and loved to their Pro Engineer seat in Creo Parametric, and then they start doing sort of broader process assessments across their enterprise to get more value out of the Creo apps that serve different areas of the development process in a unique fashion.
Nice.
Now, we were here last year, and you were talking about how Creo 1.0 adoption had been a little bit slow, as you'd expected, and that you were expecting that with Creo 2 that things were going to rocket up a lot more quickly, and you would see much quicker adoption. Has that come true? And if so, are you pleased with the result? Did you
It
feel like
largely has. We're
Yeah.
pretty happy with the adoption. What we're finding is that we have pockets of. It's funny to watch. We have a pocket where we'll get a fairly large customer to go. Like GKN is a tier 1 supplier. That's a big adoption thing for us in Germany, right? We expect a number of tier 2 suppliers to happen as a result of that, as an example. So we're closely watching. I know Mike mentioned companies like John Deere and Caterpillar going to. We expect that to further drive, adoption in their supply chains as well. And so we're on track for 50% by the end of this year, and that was our goal. And we think we'll meet or exceed that. And in the U.S. it's approaching 30%. Right? We're very, very strong in kind of our main geographies, and some of the other geographies it's a little weaker. But on average, we're over 25%.
It's good to get those big use cases in there at the top.
Yeah. Well, and when, as I said,
start
when a
with the big
big
boys.
customer that's driving a big supply chain goes, then we see kind of a domino effect, and so we see this acceleration happening as the year goes on.
Brian, Ken and I were talking at lunch about adoption generally and how many organizations are a release, 2 release, 3 release, 4 releases behind, just due to expense and resource commitment and just
possibly not knowing which app to buy?
Adam, you won't let it go.
all right, that too.
He needs a price.
But anyways, with what Brian just said, that must surprise you, that 50% adoption in a relatively short period of time.
It'll end up being about 18 months. We'll have 50%, we think, in about 18 months from the
That
original
is
release.
kind of surprising.
I mean, we have, if you guys
But
spend any time in
you've
our
given
upgrade
them
center,
some enticements, though, I think, haven't you?
I like to
Yeah,
think we
but-
have. Yeah.
Also, there's an element of Pareto principle. At least according to what we've seen, some very large PTC clients decided to go this direction.
Yeah.
So that had a
Yeah.
significant weighting on those percentages. I mean,
We'll sit down with
There's
a
always going to
customer.
be a lot of little guys that are going to lag,
oh yeah,
just because they just don't want to disrupt the business.
Yeah,
right.
There's gonna be-
It's time, it's money.
Well, it's funny. Independent channel customers. What I mean by that is channel customers that are not part of a major supply chain of ours. They go very quickly. They're on Creo 2. It's the channel customers that are part of these major supply chains that are waiting. They're looking upstream and waiting for those things to
They got to
change.
wait for the parent to go.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mark? Jim?
Josh hasn't had a chance.
Anyone
to
else?
ask a question. He's just taking video.
No,
I'm trying to stay
I'm
still.
still mulling over. The 2 issues that I'm mulling over are the question I asked and then the question Ken asked. I guess one of the other questions about working in the direct versus the parametric mode is this idea of persistent and non-persistent constraints. The idea, if you're working, for example, in the parametric mode and then you go to the direct mode and you make changes, and then you go back to the parametric mode, will the model still remember the parametric constraints and the variables that were on the model?
We never forget.
Okay.
We never
They
forget.
don't throw them out of the database.
We
It's
don't
still
throw
there.
anything out ever. What we will
Yeah,
do,
but what if you make topological changes to the model?
we still remember. We still remember.
History. Remember.
No, I know it's in the history, but
that-
then
You
the-
can-
The key question is, are you allowing a direct edit to violate a parametric constraint?
that's an excellent way to say it. Yeah,
The constraint is still there in the database, in the history.
right.
But then at the very leaf of a tree, you can override it with a
Excellent way
direct
to-
edit.
So-
Now, I know some implementations totally allow that, because they can always, because they've saved the history, they can throw away, if somebody wants to
They can
override
throw
and
away
say, I
that
don't want that,
that
they
branch.
can go right back to where they were before with
Yeah.
all the constraints in place. So the question really becomes, is in Creo, for the direct, can you override a constraint? And do you tell the user you are doing that when they make that change?
It depends. In Creo Direct, we do not restrict you in any way, shape, or form. We want the user experience in Creo Direct to be a direct modeling experience. There are no restrictions. You're working in a direct modeling paradigm. That's it, right? Okay. You can move components around. You can box select multiple components and change geometry of 3 or 4 or 5 components simultaneously while moving other components. You can do all this stuff.
But you could always roll back.
You can always go back when those components go back into the parametric environment. You can always go back, and we have a track changes mechanism that actually informs the parametric user that certain changes have been made to their parametric models. If a model originates in Creo Parametric, or Pro Engineer, goes to Creo Direct and gets modified in a direct modeling environment, and then goes back, the first thing the parametric modeling user sees is a track changes dialog. The track changes dialog gives them a list of everything that was done in the direct modeling environment and allows them to accept or reject those changes right then and there.
Right.
And if they keep them, they can still go back and delete them later if they want. But they're immediately notified. So it's
and then the other is, since I had a very different perception, John's a better listener than I am.
It was subtle.
But I'm trying to think of the use cases where that would be tremendously useful, where you're not changing the originally authored model, but then it's changing in Creo. So give me like a workflow scenario. Like, let's just say, okay, I'm bringing in a CATIA model, right?
Yep.
And then it creates a Creo model, right?
Okay, this is the case where we're importing, but we're going to maintain a link back to the original model.
You're maintaining a link back,
okay.
So when you make changes, the original model is never changed,
right.
But the Creo model is changed.
Yep.
Okay. And the only cases I could imagine is if you're ever going from a transition from CATIA back to Creo.
No.
But,
I got one.
I got one right off the top of my head.
All right.
Which is reuse. So I want to take some existing thing that I've got, and now I want to pull it over. I want to reuse that, but I want to use it in the Creo environment as opposed to the CATIA.
But when you do
That's
the
right, but
reuse, are you expecting changes to happen in
You're not
CATIA?
changing the original model.
Well, if that's the case, then why is the update thing even why does that even
Yeah.
matter? Why don't you just do an export and import?
An OEM
that would be
supplies,
another way to do it.
or a supplier gives an OEM a particular component model.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
In order to use that component model, the OEM must drill some holes to mount it.
Right.
Okay? The OEM is changing that model. However, if the supplier ever makes a change to what they're sending,
that'll propagate downstream.
They allow it to propagate up.
All right.
And then the holes are redrawn again.
Yeah,
or
but it's
re-drilled.
more one directional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's better
That
than
does
mine.
make
Yeah,
sense.
that's a good
Yeah.
It is a great example. In fact, that is the collaboration use case that Mike was trying to talk about. Is we have lots of customers that have a myriad of suppliers that use a myriad of CAD systems, and they would like to not wait until their suppliers' designs are complete before they start incorporating them into their design.
Or
They want to bring them
usually
in as part of the design
I
process.
usually
right?
see it the other way. So in automotive, for example, the OEMs would have CATIA V5, whereas we have a lot of suppliers that have Pro Engineer or Creo, and so like at the assembly level, if something is changed, and then the supplier wants to reflect those changes in their model. I could see that as being tremendously helpful.
Yeah, what you have to stop and think, what is the most common scenario of why a company has got a foreign database model? It's coming from the suppliers, typically.
Right. The supply chain. Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct.
Do have a question for you. You guys mentioned a partnership with Stratasys this morning. So a few things come up with that. People have already been printing out parts made with Creo, I'm sure. So why this need for, I guess it's a new app or a new extension? And is it a new piece of software that's coming down the pipe?
It's right now it's just a research project, but we've been learning a lot about 3D printing, and what we're learning is that 3D printing, like any other manufacturing process, deserves the attention in the design phase before you go to print it, so that you can be assured that what you get off the printer is going to meet your needs. And for many, many years, there have been rules about proper sheet metal design, proper design for turning, design for assembly, design for injection molding. There has to be, someone has to write a book designed for 3D printing.
To get the right drafts so that you can build without support.
I've seen articles on that where they talk about the conditioning of the surfaces on a 3D model. They have to set certain requirements to get a decent 3D printout.
Yeah, I mean, what confounds things a little bit is different printers are going to have different levels of capability. Different printers are going to be capable of printing with different materials. So we're researching all of that, and what you saw this morning was a prototype that used some of our native geometry tools to analyze the model for certain types of aspects that we know might be 3D print sensitive, like wall thicknesses and how close two things can be and so forth. And so we're doing some research on that, and Stratasys is a good partner of ours, and we're working with them to sort of understand this better. But I haven't. But we're right now it's just a research project, and we're not sort of announcing any new apps or extensions on that.
So this morning, Halpern said one of our favorite catchphrases over at EVD Media that we find ridiculous, which is this idea that 3D printing is going to completely revolutionize the way we manufacture things. We find that we're a little skeptical of that idea, and I'd like for you to kind of jump into what you see. Why do you think, as PTC, that this is such a game changer in terms of manufacturing? We know it is in terms of prototyping and engineering and design and one-offs. But in terms of manufacturing, why is it important that PTC partner with somebody like Stratasys?
Well, I mean, you don't have to tool anything out to build a 3D part. You don't have to establish manufacturing process plans to build a 3D part.
Sure, to make one or to make two. But I'm talking. You said specifically revolutionizing manufacturing, and in my mind, that means making lots of stuff.
Yeah, I think Jim. I don't want to speak for Jim, but I think Jim meant that sort of in the context of sort of a long-term vision and how far this stuff has come. And I think he sees and hears customers. I mean, I think Airbus has gone on record to say that they expect a certain number of the parts in their planes to be 3D manufactured.
On the Joint Strike Fighter, there already are.
Yeah, so I mean, it's happening.
Stratasys is an object, or everyone's heavily pushing the AMF format, which is the new format, and you don't have to run AMF format through a 3D printer. You can run it on a mill or any kind of machine you want to. It's a different representation. So in essence, it's a new way of representing output data for manufacturing. So it's an abstraction. You have to get away from the idea of squirting plastic or powder and take a look at the implications of what could you do with the format and other...
Digital making. More broadly.
Yeah, it's a new representation.
Yeah. Jim Rhodes, do you have a comment? Yeah, there's a lot of research going on right now in 3D printing in terms of different deposit rates and then being able to have variability of deposit rates to get fine detail at the edges and then greater mass application in areas where the detail's less so that they can increase the production rate. So I think it's early enough.
Speed is a big issue.
Yeah, it's the speeds and feeds, right?
You're going to see this stuff
you
going
don't
to
see
the
any of
factory.
that because all the early stuff is constant speeds and feeds, and you know that they can be optimized and get a lot better.
The Star Trek replicator will happen.
Do you know, has anybody worked on metal matrix composites yet? Where they mix a combination of powdered metals to create composites?
Some of the 3D printers can mix materials. I'm not sure about metals, but I know they can mix materials.
I've seen one that can print 25 or 30 things at a time.
Oak Ridge is doing a lot of research in that area right now. It's reported in Scientific American.
I have one other Creo question for you. We had talked last year about freestyle, which was pretty new and sexy at the time. How has freestyle or sub-D modeling in general within the Creo ecosystem been, how has it been adopted? Have people latched onto it yet? Does it seem like it's a
We're getting
strategy?
great traction with freestyle. I mean, I talked about the specialized bike example in my roadmap today, and they're a great example of a customer that's brought their industrial design into the Creo Parametric environment. The video that Mike showed of Creo 3 was a freestyle video showing how in Creo 3 we'll be able to now parametrically control the boundaries of a freestyle feature.
That is
Badly
really
needed.
Yeah,
Badly
control
needed.
tangency and curvature continuity to other surfaces. So that way you can now have this freeform
Best of both
geometry that
worlds.
parametrically updates when its boundary conditions have to move, but still stays free flow and has good reflection surfaces and so forth in between. And so customers are seeing that roadmap and are really adopting it. We've got a lot of customers building products that have organic shapes that are, for the first time, we're going in and we're saying, do you really need to use that other surfacing tool? And they say, yeah, we do. We can't do X, Y, and Z. We say, well, maybe we should sit down and see Creo 2. Let's sit down and take a look at Creo 2, and then we'll have another discussion. And we're oftentimes very successful in that discussion because we've got great new paradigm, and ISDX in and of itself, our parametric surfacing tools, have also really come a long way. We've got much higher order curves and much higher order surfaces available in ISDX than we even had in Wildfire 5. So it's really come a long way, and we're winning and winning and winning there. It's been really good.
More Clark sub-Ds or more like T-splines, or have we done something different with them?
No,
They have their own algorithm. It's different.
It's our own subdivisional surface modeling capabilities that we built into the core of the
Because
product.
the control over tangency.
Oh, it still converts to NURBS.
Yeah.
It ultimately in the future could replace I was asked about T-splines, and I said no. I don't see T-splines taking off. Because NURBS is much more general. T-splines is solving a very narrow problem.
I thought that T-splines actually gave more flexibility to NURBS.
Yeah, but people are not going to jump on that bandwagon simply because of a triangular surface. So it's out.
Oh, you better believe they do.
Better.
You better believe they do. It's been a huge deal in the industrial design community. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I
NURBS is fantastic
actually went to
technology,
a
but-
workshop where I used Rhino with T-spline extensions. I did that last summer.
Yeah.
And without the extensions, there were certain complex surfaces you couldn't design well just with
Yeah,
NURBS.
true.
And the T-spline
Makes it much easier.
extensions made those.
Been able to do it quad
It's a
down.
question of degrees, though. You know, Ken's saying it doesn't make that much of a difference. You're saying it
It's
makes
a game
a
changer.
huge difference.
It's a game changer.
I'm not in a
Triangle
position
has
to
been-
make
I'm not ready.
No. I just mean generally sub-D modeling as a workflow
But the
enhancement.
T-spline has a triangle as opposed to just sub-D is quad dominant.
I think we're wrapping up, guys. And Brian Thompson, thanks a whole lot. Participants, thanks.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everybody, for your interest.
Okay.
Great job.
See you guys
you
on
very
the flip
much.
side.
That was great. Brian, thank you.
My pleasure.
People tell me everything you told them.
Sorry,
They sent me over another.
good talking to you. I'm going one more time. Is that right?
A production of EVD Media.